After a rainy afternoon yesterday and in the evening, now what looks to be a gorgeous day today to hike the southern unit of Effigy Mounds National Monument. And that part starts over here just a little ways away from my van and continues all the way down that ridge, but you have to come back the same way. You can't drop down to the road because of the cliffs. This morning's hike begins with a little bit of a rise up to the top of the ridge, but a lovely morning here at 8 o'clock. This gives you an idea of looking up the hillside at the ridge of rock up at the top, if you will, capstone almost. An old forest road reconstituted for monument maintenance. Here we are at an intersection of, looks like Nezca Point Trail, which I won't take, and Marching Bears, which is 1.1 mile, which continues on the road, and that's where we're primarily going. Here I'm at one unmarked mound. Doesn't even appear to be on the map. I'm thinking that green dot is it, so that probably is that little dot. First major intersection, and I think that where we are is right above my thumb, and we're going to walk up to Campground Mound Group. It looks like a bear on the way on the left side, and then further up on the left side a bird and 6 or 7 cone mounds. Here's our first effigy mound, another bear. Looks like that's the back end of the bear. We're standing in the torso area, which again seems to be so kind of squared, this angle right here, as to present a natural theater for ritual, etc. And presumably that's the head up there, and the shoulders and the front legs here. Looking from the rump up to the head. Again, notice this tree. When did it begin to grow? How old is it? Are these just natural growth trees that maybe live 150 years or something like that, so they're not even relevant to these mounds other than happen chance of growing? In fact, the irony is if we look up beyond the head, we see an even higher area. So why was this area particularly chosen? Who knows? We are now approaching the compound mound group. So this should be a bird in front of us, and then beyond are the 6 or 7 cone-shaped mounds. Now look closely at that bird design. You'll see it's like a swallow with the 2 arched, outswept wings. I'll pan from left to right. Notice this is one back swept and outstretched wing. Here the torso of the bird, and we're standing beside the head, and there the other wing, and of course the tail goes back in that fashion. And perhaps the tail is even squared off. We'll go take a look at that, see if we can detect it. That may be the tail design of some swallows. It would seem that swallows, or bird like it, would habitat in these cliff sides alongside the river. So it might be a very common and respected critter. At this late stage, 500 years or so later, we can see a fairly distinct angle between the wing and the torso of the bird. So standing down here at the very end and at the corner of the tail, it does look like it's perhaps squared off, or maybe square-ish but round. See that edge there, but we can't really tell at this point. Who knows how much the soil has migrated, how much the mowing here has contributed to some very subtle soil slippage, who knows. Here are a small colony of these red toadstools that we normally just see individually. It's interesting looking at the bird from this perspective. How was it used in rituals, if it was? Did people stand along that top line of the wing? Or did they stand on the mound? Did they stand down in these two areas beneath the wings? That makes some kind of philosophical sense, doesn't it? Here we're at the head of the line of compound mounds, and as we've learned from our experience and some of the literature, a compound mound is a series of conical mounds connected by a shallower mound. And here I think we can make out the differences. The hump of this conical mound, another conical mound down there beyond the tree, I think, and then this interconnecting area, unless there's a mound hidden in there too. Evidence seems to suggest that all the burial artifacts, if any, are in the cones and not in the interconnecting part of the compound mound. Pan this compound mound because it's quite long, and I couldn't see it all from before. Here's what looks like the second mound. That there's probably a series that we may or may not detect as we walk down through here. Little hump here, and another hump maybe down where the sun is dominant there, with some leaf patches on the right, dark brown or brownish. As I walk down alongside this mound, peeking through the trees on my right is the Mississippi River. I think as the third mound, can't really tell which are mounds as we walk down through here further. Gap, if you will, in this compound mound. Does it reflect archaeology work or somebody else maliciously digging or what? And here we see another mound, of course. Seems fairly distinct to what looks like a larger mound whose perimeter flows out from the linear confines of the compound mound itself. Probably there's a mound further down, but it looks like it's just the same level as the connecting part. From this vantage point, we see that there's a mound here, and then the mound a little bit further up beyond that bigger tree to the left side. Here's squarish indentation. I wonder if archaeologists were digging here or it's just happen chance. Using the logic of my brain, which I think humans have had in pretty much the same form for millenniums, it's hard to imagine that these compound mounds with their interconnecting mounds do not represent a concept of the connection in life and afterlife of the individuals buried in the conical sections of the compound mound. It just seems too obvious. That doesn't mean it's right.
Looks like a different kind of mushroom growing out of a log per se, or at least a stump. Such an array of different colored, sized, and shaped mushrooms in this incredibly rich soil, which in some cases is dark brown and spongy. It's no wonder that the authors of fantasies like Alice in Wonderland found mushrooms to be so piquantly intriguing. There are a whole colony of very small mushrooms, the largest in the upper right hand corner, slightly bigger than a dime, maybe almost a nickel. So the others are significantly smaller. Notice also how squarish this corner of the bird's head seems to be. I need to check my bird books and see what the profile of such a bird's head would look like. Just saw my second and third white-tailed deer of the day. A mother and her little fawn, their white tails flashing in this somewhat mottled light understory cover as they bounced away from me. It's fun to see. Here another good perspective of that bear that we first saw. Here's its head right to our immediate right. Notice the haunch. Now I don't know how much of that is slippage of soil downhill there. How realistic can you do dirt? Reminds me of something Stonehenge-like.